Part 1. The wedding invitation that cost $4 million. My name is Claire Bennett. I was 36 years old when my younger brother sent me the most expensive wedding invitation I had ever received. It arrived inside a black envelope with gold lettering, delivered by a private courier instead of regular mail. At first, I smiled. For nearly 3 years, my family had barely spoken to me, yet here was an invitation addressed in my mother's handwriting. For one impossible second, I thought maybe someone had finally decided to fix what had been broken. Then I opened it. Inside wasn't just an invitation. It was a contract, 5 pages. Every page already prepared for my signature. The first clause demanded that I permanently withdraw every legal objection concerning my grandfather's estate. The second required me to transfer my voting rights in Bennett holdings to my brother before the wedding ceremony. The third prohibited me from discussing any family financial matters with guests, lawyers, or the media. The fourth required me to contribute $1 million toward the wedding as a gesture of unity. The fifth almost made me laugh. It required me to stand during the reception and publicly apologize for years of selfish behavior that damaged the Bennett family. At the bottom, my father's signature appeared beside one sentence: sign before midnight. Otherwise, your seat will be given to someone who truly supports this family. I read it 3 times. Then I noticed something they never expected me to notice: the date on the legal acknowledgement. It had been prepared 3 months before they claimed to have mailed it. They had never intended to negotiate. They expected me to surrender. Instead, I picked up my phone and called a forensic document examiner. That single phone call would eventually cancel a wedding, destroy a billion-dollar empire, expose 30 years of fraud, and reveal that my grandfather hadn't died believing I betrayed him. He had died trying to warn me, but I didn't know that yet. Neither did my brother, and that ignorance would become the most expensive mistake of his life. If you had met my brother, Ethan Bennett, you would probably have liked him. Everyone did. He knew exactly how to make people feel important. He remembered birthdays. He donated to charities. He smiled at waiters. He shook every employee's hand. He never raised his voice. People described him as generous, visionary, natural leader. Those same people never saw what happened after the audience disappeared. I did, because I spent 36 years living beside him. Whenever Ethan wanted something, the rules somehow changed. If he crashed a car, Dad called it youthful confidence. If I forgot to return a phone call, I was accused of disrespecting the family. When Ethan lost $2 million in a failed investment, Mother described it as entrepreneurial courage. When I questioned a suspicious accounting report, I was told I cared more about numbers than people. Eventually, you stop arguing. You simply become the person everyone has already decided you are: the difficult daughter, the cold sister, the obstacle. Everything truly changed after my grandfather, William Bennett, passed away. He had built Bennett Holdings from a single trucking company into one of the largest logistics businesses on the West Coast. Everyone assumed Ethan would inherit complete control. He was the son, the future CEO, the family favorite. Instead, grandfather surprised everyone. He divided ownership equally between us, not because he loved me more, because he trusted me differently. His will contained one unusual condition: neither sibling could sell company assets, borrow against family property, or transfer controlling shares without the written approval of the other. At the funeral, Ethan hugged me. He whispered into my ear, "We'll fix this later." At the time, I thought he meant paperwork. I didn't realize he meant me. For almost 2 years, everything appeared normal. Board meetings, annual reports, holiday dinners, family vacations, small disagreements, nothing unusual. Until one Tuesday morning, I was reviewing quarterly statements when a transaction caught my attention. $4 million, transferred from a family reserve account into an unfamiliar investment partnership. No approval, no board vote, no signature from me. I assumed accounting had made an error. They hadn't. The transfer existed. So did the authorization. Only it carried my electronic signature, a signature I had never created. I stared at the screen until my coffee became cold. There are moments when reality doesn't shatter. It quietly shifts. Everything still looks familiar. But suddenly, nothing feels safe. I called Ethan immediately. He answered on the second ring. Before I could finish asking my question, he laughed. "It's already done, Claire." That sentence haunted me. Already done, not, "What transfer?" Not, "There must be a mistake." Already done. That afternoon, I drove to headquarters. My father was waiting inside the executive conference room. Mother sat beside him. Ethan stood near the window. No lawyers, no accountants, just family. Which meant this meeting wasn't about discovering the truth. It was about convincing me to accept theirs. Father folded his hands. Sometimes leadership requires flexibility. I asked who signed my name. Nobody answered. Mother slid a folder across the table. Inside was another agreement. If I signed it, the disputed transfer would become retroactively authorized. No investigation, no lawsuit, no questions. In exchange, they promised everything would return to normal. I closed the folder. Then I asked one simple question. What happens if I refuse? For the first time, Ethan stopped smiling. He looked directly into my eyes and quietly said, "You won't." I wish I could tell you I walked out immediately. I didn't. Because betrayal isn't shocking when it comes from strangers. It's devastating when it comes wearing your father's watch, your mother's perfume, and your brother's familiar smile. That night, I barely slept. Around 3 a.m, my phone buzzed. It was a message from someone I hadn't heard from in almost 5 years. Olivia Carter, my grandfather's former executive assistant. The message contained only one sentence. If they're asking you to sign something, don't. He knew this day would come. I stared at the screen. Then another message appeared. Meet me tomorrow. Come alone. For the first time, I realized my grandfather may have left behind more than a will. He may have left behind a plan. Part 2. The secret vault beneath the lighthouse. I barely slept. Olivia's message replayed in my mind over and over. If they're asking you to sign something, don't. He knew this day would come. My grandfather had been dead for almost 2 years. How could he possibly have known? The next morning, I drove north along the Pacific Coast Highway until the city disappeared behind the cliffs. Olivia had chosen a place that meant nothing to anyone except my grandfather, an abandoned lighthouse overlooking the ocean. When I arrived, she was already waiting beside the rusted gate. She looked older than I remembered, but her eyes carried the same calm certainty they always had. "You came alone," she said. "I wasn't sure I should." She smiled sadly. "That's exactly why William trusted you." The mention of my grandfather's first name caught me off guard. She had worked beside him for nearly 30 years, but never once had I heard her call him anything except Mr. Bennett. She unlocked the gate without another word. The lighthouse had been closed for decades. Broken windows, cracked stone, salt-covered walls. Nothing about it suggested it held anything valuable. Olivia led me downstairs, past the old generator room, past a storage basement, until she stopped in front of a concrete wall. She reached into her purse. Instead of a key, she removed an old silver pocket watch, my grandfather's watch, the one everyone believed had disappeared after his funeral. She pressed it against a rusted steel plate hidden beneath layers of paint. A faint click echoed through the room. The concrete wall slowly shifted. Behind it was a steel vault. I couldn't speak. "I helped your grandfather build this 12 years ago," Olivia said quietly. "He called it his insurance policy." Inside the vault sat dozens of black archive boxes. Every one carried a handwritten year: 1998, 1999, 2000, 2001, 2002, and finally, 2025, the year before he died. Olivia handed me the last box. He said if you were opening this, then Ethan had already crossed the line. My hands trembled as I lifted the lid. The first thing inside wasn't money or jewelry. It was a letter, written entirely in my grandfather's handwriting. "Claire, if you're reading this, then someone has asked you to choose family over truth. Do not. The people asking have already chosen. You are simply the last person they need to convince. For years, I believed I could protect this family by solving every problem quietly. Instead, I taught the wrong people that consequences were optional. If Ethan ever asks you to sign anything involving company assets without independent counsel, refuse. If your father pressures you, record the conversation. If your mother cries, remember that tears are not evidence. Most importantly, never assume the fraud begins where you first discover it. Follow the money. Always follow the money. Love, grandfather. I finished reading. The room was silent except for the distant sound of waves crashing against the cliffs. How long? I whispered. Olivia looked toward the vault shelves. Longer than you want to know. She opened another archive box. Inside were internal audit reports, missing inventory, unauthorized bonuses, false invoices, shell companies. Most had one thing in common. Each investigation had ended with a handwritten note from my grandfather, resolved privately. I stared at page after page. He had protected the company, protected the family, protected Ethan. For years. But why keep all of this? Olivia answered without hesitation. Because one day he realized protecting someone from consequences doesn't save them. She reached into another box. This time she handed me a flash drive. I've never watched what's on it. What is it? He said only you should. Back at my apartment, I inserted the drive into my laptop. One video file appeared. No title, no date. I clicked play. The screen flickered. Then my grandfather appeared. He looked thinner than I remembered. The oxygen tube beneath his nose confirmed the recording had been made during his final illness. He looked directly into the camera. If you're seeing this, Claire, I'm gone. He smiled gently. I'm sorry. The words hit harder than I expected. I should have stopped this years ago. He paused. Ethan wasn't born dishonest. He became dishonest every time I rescued him. Photographs appeared beside him. School records, business reports, private settlement agreements. He learned that mistakes disappear if someone else pays. Another pause. I paid. Your parents paid. And eventually, they expected you to pay too. I felt tears gathering. Not because I was shocked, because somewhere deep inside, I had always known. I divided the company equally because I needed one person who still believed rules mattered. He looked tired now. If Ethan ever tries to remove you, he won't start with force. He'll start with guilt. Then came the sentence that changed everything. I've hidden one document even Olivia has never seen. My heart started pounding. It proves who has really controlled Bennett Holdings for the last 15 years. The screen faded to black. Then new text appeared. Find Ledger 7. Olivia frowned when I mentioned it. There are only 6 ledgers. We searched the vault for nearly 3 hours. Nothing. Every shelf, every cabinet, every archive box, only 6. Finally, I noticed something strange. The years on the shelves weren't evenly spaced. Between 2016 and 2017, there was exactly enough room for one missing box. Someone had removed it recently. Dust covered every other shelf, except that one. Olivia slowly looked up at me. We're too late. Before either of us could speak again, her phone rang. She answered. The color drained from her face. What happened? She lowered the phone. Bennett Holdings, what about it? The board just announced an emergency shareholder meeting. I frowned. So? She looked straight into my eyes. They're voting tomorrow morning to remove you from the company. I felt my stomach tighten. They can't. Olivia's voice was barely above a whisper. They can, if they convince everyone you're no longer mentally fit to serve. At that exact moment, my own phone buzzed. A news alert appeared across the screen. Breaking. Bennett Holdings launches internal investigation into executive Claire Bennett following allegations of financial misconduct. I froze. Financial misconduct? I hadn't taken a single dollar. Then another notification arrived. It was from Ethan. Only 7 words. Should have signed the papers, Claire. For the first time, I realized the forged signature wasn't the real attack. It had only been the beginning. Someone had already started rewriting my entire life. And unless I found Ledger 7, the world would believe every word. The woman who sold the truth. The drive back from the lighthouse felt longer than the journey there. Every traffic light, every passing car, every ringing phone. They all reminded me of the same terrifying fact. By sunrise, my family wouldn't just be accusing me of misconduct. They would be asking an entire board of directors to erase me from the company my grandfather had spent 50 years building. I hadn't slept in nearly 40 hours, but exhaustion wasn't what frightened me. It was certainty. Everything my grandfather predicted was happening exactly as he said it would. First came guilt, then pressure. Now came character assassination. What came after that? I wasn't sure I wanted to know. At 7 the next morning, Olivia and I arrived outside Bennett Holdings. The lobby that had once felt like a second home suddenly felt foreign. Employees who used to greet me warmly avoided eye contact. Some whispered, others stared. Several security guards stood near the elevators. One stepped toward me. "I'm sorry, Miss Bennett. Your executive access has been suspended." He sounded genuinely uncomfortable. By whose order? The chairman. My father. For years, he had insisted he only held that title because my grandfather asked him to. Now he was using it against me. I handed over my temporary visitor badge without arguing. Sometimes silence unsettles people more than anger. The emergency board meeting began at 9. 14 directors sat around the polished walnut table. My father occupied the head seat. Ethan sat beside him. My mother wasn't officially a board member, yet somehow she occupied a chair against the wall, watching, waiting. Like this wasn't business, like it was theater. The company attorney stood first. "We have received credible evidence suggesting Executive Vice President Claire Bennett approved unauthorized financial transfers before attempting to conceal those actions." The room became perfectly still. Unauthorized transfers? They had taken the forged loan and somehow rewritten the story so I appeared responsible. The attorney placed several documents before the directors. Every page contained my name. Every signature looked genuine. If I hadn't known the truth, I might have believed them myself. Then Ethan stood. He looked exactly as I remembered. Perfect suit, perfect smile, perfect confidence. "My sister has always been brilliant," he began, "but brilliance sometimes becomes obsession." He sighed dramatically. When our grandfather passed away, Claire struggled emotionally. Several directors nodded sympathetically. She began seeing enemies where none existed, more nodding. "I've tried for 2 years to protect her dignity." Protect. There was that word again, the favorite word of people hiding control behind kindness. Ethan continued. "We hoped the wedding would heal our family. Instead, she threatened lawsuits, destroyed trust, and now she's attacking everyone trying to help her." He looked toward me. "I'm sorry it came to this. The performance was flawless. If I hadn't lived beside him my entire life, I might have applauded. When it became my turn to speak, I remained seated. I have one question." The attorney looked surprised. "Go ahead. Who created those signatures?" Silence. "I asked who created them," Father answered instead. "Claire, this isn't helping." "No," I replied quietly. "It's helping more than you realize." I placed my own folder onto the table. Inside were the forensic findings Olivia and I had received only an hour earlier. The expert's conclusion occupied 1 page. The electronic signature associated with Claire Bennett originated from a device registered to Bennett Strategic Development. That department belonged to exactly one executive, Ethan. Murmurs spread around the table. For the first time, my brother's smile weakened, only slightly, but enough. Before anyone could ask another question, the conference room doors opened. A woman hurried inside carrying a laptop. I recognized her instantly, Melissa Grant, our Chief Information Officer. She had worked beside me for nearly 8 years. If there was anyone in the company I trusted besides Olivia, it was Melissa. She looked nervous, very nervous. Father nodded toward her. "Tell them," Melissa swallowed, then connected her laptop to the projector. Security logs appeared on the screen. According to the records, my employee account had accessed confidential financial files at 2:30 in the morning, the night before the disputed transfer. Ethan folded his hands. The evidence speaks for itself. I stared at the screen. Something felt wrong, very wrong. Then I noticed it, the timestamp. The files had supposedly been opened from my office computer. Only, I wasn't even in the country that night. I had been speaking at an accounting conference in London, 5,000 miles away. I slowly turned toward Melissa. "You know that's impossible." She looked away. "I only reported what the system shows. You built the system." No answer. "You know, someone changed those logs." Still nothing. That's when I understood. Melissa hadn't discovered the lie. She had become part of it. The board requested a recess. Directors gathered in small groups, whispering. Some believed me. Some believed Ethan. Most simply looked confused. Olivia quietly touched my arm. "Come with me." We walked into an empty hallway. Without speaking, she handed me her phone. It displayed a recent bank transfer, $2 million, sent 3 days earlier. Recipient, Grant Family Trust, Melissa. My stomach sank. She hadn't lied because she believed Ethan. She had been paid. "I don't understand," I whispered. "Melissa already makes more money than almost anyone here." Olivia nodded. "This wasn't about becoming rich. It was about staying safe." Just then, the elevator doors opened. Melissa stepped out alone. She saw us immediately. For several seconds, nobody moved. Then she surprised me. Instead of walking away, she walked toward us. "I'm sorry." Those were the first words she spoke. I searched her face, looking for anger, looking for arrogance. Instead, I saw fear, real fear. They threatened my son. My heartbeat slowed. "What? They knew about his medical treatments. They said the insurance coverage would disappear." Her voice broke. "They knew everything." Tears rolled down her face. "I thought if I changed the records, they'd stop." I believed her. Not because she cried, because she looked ashamed. Ashamed people don't usually invent smaller lies. They confess larger truths. She reached into her purse. "I couldn't keep this." She handed me a small encrypted flash drive. "What's on it?" "The original server backups." My pulse quickened. They copied the files, but they forgot something. "What?" "The security camera archive." She looked directly at me. "The night your signature was forged, someone recorded the entire operation for one incredible second." Hope returned. Proof. Real proof. Not opinions. Not accusations. Evidence. Then Melissa whispered something that shattered it again. "There's just one problem. The backup isn't complete." "Why not?" "Because someone deleted the final 20 minutes. My heart sank. "The part showing who actually sat at the computer." Melissa nodded. "Exactly." Before I could respond, my phone vibrated. "Unknown number," I answered. A man's voice spoke calmly. "If you want to know who erased those 20 minutes, stop looking inside Bennett Holdings." The line went silent. Then one final sentence. "Your grandfather trusted the wrong lawyer." The call disconnected. I stood frozen. Olivia looked at me. "Who was it?" I slowly lowered the phone. "I think this started long before Ethan. At that exact moment, another notification appeared. Emergency news bulletin. Federal investigators have requested financial records from Bennett Holdings following allegations of corporate fraud. Someone else had begun digging, someone much bigger than my family. And somewhere, a missing ledger, a corrupt lawyer, and 20 erased minutes of security footage were connected. The only question was, who was really pulling the strings? The anonymous call stayed with me all afternoon. Your grandfather trusted the wrong lawyer. Those 7 words changed everything. Until then, I believed Ethan had orchestrated the fraud. Now I wasn't so sure. If someone had been manipulating the Bennett family for years, then the forged signature, the missing ledger, and the wedding contract might all be pieces of something much older. Olivia didn't say a word during the drive. She simply handed me an address, a quiet neighborhood on the outskirts of Monterey. One name was written beneath it, Richard Holloway. I recognized it immediately. Grandfather's personal attorney. The man who had drafted every trust, every acquisition, every estate document for nearly 25 years. "He retired after your grandfather died," Olivia said. "At least that's what everyone believes." The house looked abandoned. The mailbox overflowed with unopened envelopes. The garden had become a forest of weeds. I knocked. Nothing. Just as I turned away, the front door creaked open. Richard Holloway looked 20 years older than I remembered. His hands shook. His eyes were sunken. Before I could introduce myself, he whispered, "I've been expecting you." Inside, stacks of legal files covered every surface. The curtains stayed closed despite the bright afternoon sun. Richard poured coffee but never touched his own cup. "I failed your grandfather," he said quietly. "You warned him?" I warned him too late. He disappeared into another room and returned carrying an old leather folder. Inside were copies of amendments to my grandfather's estate. Every amendment bore my grandfather's signature. Everyone looked genuine. Richard placed a magnifying glass beside them. Look closely. I compared the signatures. At first, they seemed identical. Then I noticed it. My grandfather always crossed the letter T with a long horizontal stroke. On 3 amendments, the stroke stopped halfway, a tiny difference, but enough for a forensic examiner to question authenticity. Richard closed the folder. They weren't signed by William. They were signed after heavy sedation during his final hospital stay. My chest tightened. Who brought the documents? He looked directly at me. Your father? The room fell silent. I had prepared myself to hear Ethan's name, not my father's, Richard continued. I refused to notarize them. So how were they approved? They found another attorney. He opened a drawer and removed a business card. The name meant nothing to me, but beneath it was the logo of a law firm that had represented Bennett Holdings for over a decade. They didn't need me anymore. Before leaving, Richard handed me a sealed envelope. William asked me to give you this only if you discovered the forged signatures. When did he say that? The week before he died. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside was another handwritten note. Claire, if you have reached this point, then the fraud has become larger than the company. Do not assume every crime was committed for money. Some people fear losing power more than losing freedom. If Ledger 7 disappears, look for the person who benefited from its disappearance, not the person who physically removed it. Trust evidence, not emotion. As we stepped outside, Olivia's phone rang. It was Melissa. She sounded panicked. You need to leave town. Why? They know you met Richard. Who knows? There was a pause. Then she whispered, the private security team. What security team? The one Bennett Holdings doesn't officially have. That evening, Emma called from Boston. She had spent the day reviewing old corporate filings. I found something strange, she said. How strange? The company that received your $4 million transfer shares the same registered address as your father's charitable foundation. I stopped walking. That's impossible. It gets worse. The foundation donated nearly $3 million over the last 8 years. To whom? Emma inhaled slowly. Political campaigns. I felt my stomach drop. This was no longer just family fraud. If corporate money had been redirected into political donations through shell companies, the consequences could destroy far more than Bennett Holdings. At midnight, someone knocked on my hotel room door. 3 slow knocks, then silence. Olivia looked through the peephole. No one. We waited another minute. Still nothing. Carefully, I opened the door. A small cardboard box rested on the carpet. No return address. Inside was a single black ledger. Across the front, written in faded silver ink, were 2 words. Ledger 7. My pulse raced. After days of searching, it had appeared at my door. But something felt wrong. Very wrong. Taped to the inside cover was a handwritten note. You finally found it. Now ask yourself why someone wanted you to. I looked at Olivia. Neither of us spoke. Instead, I carefully opened the ledger. The first pages contained exactly what I expected. Hidden transactions, secret partnerships, undisclosed payments. Then, about halfway through, I found a folded photograph. It showed my grandfather standing beside a much younger Richard Holloway. Behind them stood my father and another man I had never seen before. The unknown man's face had been circled in red ink. On the back of the photograph, someone had written only one sentence. He never wanted the company. He wanted the family. Before I could turn another page, every light in the hotel room went dark. The power had gone out. Outside, the hallway emergency lights flickered once, then disappeared. Complete darkness. A loud crash echoed from somewhere down the corridor. Olivia grabbed my arm. Claire! Footsteps. Slow, deliberate, coming toward our room. Someone stopped just outside the door. A shadow appeared beneath the gap. Then, 3 slow knocks, exactly like before. This time, a man's voice came through the darkness. I wouldn't open that ledger if I were you. He paused. Unless you're ready to learn why your grandfather was really killed. Part 5. The truth hidden in Ledger 7. Neither Olivia nor I moved. The hallway outside our hotel room was completely dark. The only light came from the faint glow of my phone lying face down on the table. 3 knocks, then silence. The stranger waited. So, the man said through the door, "Are you going to make the same mistake your grandfather made?" My heart pounded. "Who are you?" I asked. He chuckled softly. "If I tell you my name now, you'll never believe the rest." I looked at Olivia. She silently shook her head. "Do not open the door." I agreed. Instead, I spoke loudly enough for him to hear. "If you know something, say it from there." The hallway fell quiet for several seconds. Then he answered, "Ledger 7 isn't evidence. It's bait." Footsteps echoed, not walking away, walking closer. "You've spent days believing everyone is chasing the ledger. They're not. They're chasing you." Before I could respond, the emergency light suddenly flickered back on. The shadow beneath the door disappeared. I opened it immediately. The hallway was empty. No elevators moving, no stairwell door closing, no security cameras facing our room. Only a single white envelope resting on the carpet. Inside was one business card, Adrian Cross, private investigator. On the back, written in blue ink, "Trust the ledger. Never trust the order of its pages." We locked the door again. This time I examined the ledger more carefully. The page numbers felt strange. Page 18 came before page 11. Page 42 appeared twice. Entire sections seemed out of sequence. Olivia frowned. "This isn't a bookkeeping mistake." "No, it was rearranged." We carefully removed the binding. Hidden between two glued pages was a folded sheet of thin paper. A map. Not of the company. Not of any property. It was a floor plan. Bennett Holdings headquarters. One room had been circled in red. The executive archive. A room officially emptied after my grandfather's death. At the bottom, another handwritten sentence appeared. The originals were never destroyed. The next morning, we arrived before sunrise. The building was almost empty. Melissa met us in the underground parking garage. She looked exhausted. "I only have 15 minutes. What happened?" "They're replacing the archive servers today." She handed me an old access badge. "This belonged to your grandfather. It shouldn't still work. It doesn't officially." She forced a tired smile. "But he designed the building before anyone imagined electronic security." The executive archive sat behind two locked steel doors. To my surprise, the old badge unlocked both. Inside, dust covered the shelves. Most cabinets stood empty, exactly as I remembered, until Olivia noticed something unusual. One bookshelf had no dust behind it. She pushed. The entire shelf rolled sideways. Hidden behind it was another room, small, windowless, climate-controlled. Inside stood dozens of sealed storage boxes, each labeled by year, exactly like the vault beneath the lighthouse. Only these were originals, not copies. My grandfather had kept two complete archives, one hidden from the company, another hidden from the family. The first box contained board meeting recordings. The second held handwritten journals. The third contained personal letters. One envelope carried my name, another Ethan's. Several were addressed to my parents. None had ever been mailed. Then Olivia opened the final cabinet. Her breath caught. "Claire." I walked over. Inside lay dozens of original stock certificates, property deeds, ownership agreements, and one leather notebook. Across its cover, embossed in gold, private journal, William Bennett. I opened the first page. If anyone other than Claire finds this, then I failed. The entries began almost 15 years before his death. Every few pages described another decision, another compromise, another secret, another time he had rescued Ethan, another time my parents begged him not to expose the truth. Then everything changed. One entry had been underlined twice. Richard believes someone inside the family is collecting influence, not wealth. Influence, not money. I kept reading. Whoever controls the family's reputation controls every decision they make. The handwriting grew shakier near the end. They no longer fear prison. They fear exposure. A sudden noise interrupted us. The archive door slammed shut. Someone had locked it from outside. Melissa reached for her phone. No signal. The room had become completely isolated. Then the intercom crackled. A familiar voice filled the room. My father's. "Claire! I warned you to stop." I stared at the speaker. "You forged documents. You stole company funds? And you're still telling me to stop?" He sighed. "No, I'm telling you to survive." His words caught me off guard. "You're running out of time. What does that mean?" Before he answered, another voice interrupted. "Ethan, she doesn't need warnings anymore." My brother sounded calm, too calm. "The federal agents arrived 20 minutes ago." Olivia looked at me. "They're here?" Ethan laughed. "They aren't looking for us. They're looking for Claire Bennett." My pulse froze. "What? They have a warrant for your arrest." The words echoed through the archive room. Impossible. I hadn't committed any crime. Then I remembered. The forged signatures, the altered server logs, the fake approvals. If someone had built enough false evidence, federal investigators wouldn't know the difference. They would arrest the person whose name appeared on every document. Mine. The intercom clicked again. This time my father's voice returned. Lower. Almost defeated. "I tried to stop this." I frowned. "Stop what?" His answer came after a long silence. "Not Ethan. The people behind Ethan." Every hair on my arm stood up. "What people?" He never answered. Instead, the line went dead. Seconds later, the archive door unlocked by itself. When we stepped into the hallway, the entire executive floor was empty. Not a single employee, not a single security guard. Only one television remained switched on in the reception area. Breaking news filled the screen. Federal authorities have issued a warrant for the arrest of Bennett Holdings executive Claire Bennett in connection with suspected financial fraud totaling more than $38 million. $38 million? I had only known about 4. Somewhere. Someone had spent years building a crime large enough to bury me beneath it, and they had finally decided it was time for the world to believe I had committed it.